What if I told you that the most transformative moment in an empath's life isn't when they finally learn to love themselves, but when they stop apologizing for existing? Stay with me, because what happens when an empath drops their people-pleasing mask will completely shatter everything you thought you knew about kindness, boundaries, and personal power. And trust me, by the end of this, you'll understand why this transformation is both terrifying and magnificent. Here's what most people don't realize. People-pleasing isn't kindness, it's not generosity, it's not being a good person. Carl Jung understood this deeply when he explored what he called the persona, the mask we wear to gain social acceptance. For empaths, this mask becomes so heavy, so suffocating, that eventually something has to break. And when it does, the person who emerges is unrecognizable. You see, empaths spend years, sometimes decades, twisting themselves into shapes that make others comfortable. They say yes when they mean no. They smile when they're hurting. They prioritize everyone else's needs while their own soul is screaming for attention. But here's the twist that will blow your mind. This isn't sustainable. The human psyche can only suppress its authentic self for so long before it demands liberation. Listen carefully to what happens in those final days before an empath stops people-pleasing. Something shifts. A breaking point is reached. Maybe it's one betrayal too many. Maybe it's exhaustion so deep that even breathing feels like a chore. Maybe it's just the sudden realization that they've spent their entire life being everyone's emotional support while nobody bothered to ask if they were okay. Whatever the catalyst, the transformation begins. And it starts with a single revolutionary word, no. But here's where it gets absolutely fascinating. When an empath says no for the first time without apologizing, without over-explaining, without justifying, the people around them react as if the sky is falling. Friends who've depended on them suddenly feel abandoned. Family members who've taken them for granted act betrayed. Colleagues who've dumped their work on them cry foul. And the empath watches all of this with a clarity they've never had before. Jung observed that true individuation requires separating from the collective expectations and discovering one's authentic self. The empath who stops people-pleasing is going through this exact process. They're shedding the false self, the one that existed only to serve others, and revealing the real person underneath. And that person is far stronger than anyone expected. Here's what happens next, and it will send chills down your spine. The empath starts reclaiming their time, their energy, their emotional bandwidth. They stop responding to every text immediately. They stop attending events they have no interest in. They stop pretending to care about drama that doesn't concern them. And with each boundary they set, they feel lighter, freer, more themselves. But here's the part that absolutely devastates the people who've been taking advantage of them. The empath doesn't become mean. They don't become cold. They don't lose their capacity for compassion. They simply become selective. They learn to distinguish between people who genuinely need support and people who are simply comfortable using them as an emotional dumping ground. What researchers have discovered about this transformation will redefine everything you thought you knew about empathy. The empath who stops people-pleasing doesn't lose their gift. They learn to direct it wisely. Carl Jung called this the integration of the shadow, accepting the parts of ourselves we've been taught to suppress. For empaths, this shadow often contains their right to say no, their capacity for anger, their permission to prioritize themselves. Listen to this carefully, because this is where everything changes permanently. The empath discovers something revolutionary. The people who truly love them don't leave when the boundaries go up. In fact, they respect them more. They engage more authentically. They stop taking and start reciprocating. But the users, the takers, the emotional vampires, they disappear. They rage. They guilt trip. They try every manipulation tactic to restore the old dynamic. And the empath watches all of this happen with a calm that surprises even themselves. Because they finally understood what Jung meant when he said that the most important relationship is the one we have with ourselves. They've stopped abandoning themselves to keep others comfortable. They've stopped setting themselves on fire to keep others warm. But here's the absolutely mind-blowing part. The empath's life doesn't fall apart when they stop people-pleasing. It actually improves dramatically. The relationships that remain become deeper, more authentic, more reciprocal. New people enter their life who appreciate their boundaries rather than resent them. Opportunities appear because they finally have the time and energy to pursue what actually matters to them. What happens in the months that follow is what I call the great reorganization. The empath's entire social circle gets filtered through the lens of authenticity. Some people pass the test, many don't. And for the first time in their life, the empath is okay with that. They understand that a small circle of genuine connections is infinitely more valuable than a large network of superficial users. Carl Jung said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. The empath who stops people-pleasing finally claims this privilege. They stop performing. They stop pretending. They stop morphing into whatever version of themselves others need. They simply exist as they are, unapologetically, completely, authentically. Here's what this looks like in practice. The empath stops over-explaining their decisions. They don't justify their boundaries. They don't apologize for having needs. When someone asks for something unreasonable, they say no, without the lengthy explanation they used to provide. When someone tries to guilt them, they recognize the manipulation and refuse to engage. When someone expects them to prioritize their problems over their own well-being, they simply don't. And this right here, this is what Jung would call psychological sovereignty. Complete ownership of one's emotional world. The empath becomes the guardian of their own peace, the protector of their own energy, the curator of their own life. They understand that their empathy is a gift, but it's their gift to give, not anyone's right to take. But here's the final truth that makes this transformation absolutely unstoppable. The empath who stops people-pleasing doesn't become selfish. They become self-full. They fill their own cup first so they can pour from overflow rather than from depletion. They help others from a place of genuine desire rather than obligatory guilt. They show up for people because they choose to, not because they're afraid of disappointing them. The people who genuinely love them celebrate this transformation. They watch the empath blossom into someone more confident, more peaceful, more genuinely happy. They respect the boundaries because they never wanted a servant in the first place. They wanted an authentic connection with a whole person. The users, meanwhile, move on to find their next target. And the empath? They watch them go without guilt, without regret, without second-guessing their decision. Because they've finally learned that protecting their peace isn't selfish, it's sacred. When an empath stops people-pleasing, they don't lose their kindness, they gain their backbone. They don't become less compassionate, they become more discerning. They don't stop caring about others, they start caring about themselves equally. And that balance, that integration of empathy with boundaries, creates something Jung would recognize as the individuated self. Complete, whole, unstoppable. This is what happens when an empath stops pleasing everyone. They become the person they were always meant to be, not perfect, but authentic, not agreeable, but honest, not everyone's favorite, but finally, beautifully, their own.